Good morning, PT on Ice Daily Show. How's it going? Happy Clinical Tuesday. I am Dr. Lindsay Huey coming to you from Newark, Delaware. It's lovely to be with you all this morning. This morning, we're going to tackle the topic of to cope or not to cope. That is the question. So after ACL insult, there are really two choices: to have the surgery or to cope with the torn ACL. Standard of care after ACL rupture is really to have the surgery if you're a highly active person. But more and more folks are really looking to non-operative management or at least delaying surgical intervention, whether it's because they're currently in their sport and don't want to lose eligibility as an athlete, or maybe they have a manual labor job and are in a busy season and don't want to miss out on that. Whatever the host of reasons it is, we have to have the ability to come alongside of that patient, that human, and help them make the best decision after that torn ACL. So today we're going to dive into the literature to discuss what's supported in how we do that and how we help them make that decision for surgery or not. Before we do dive into that topic, I just want to share some upcoming courses that the extremity management team has. So, really, throughout the whole entire 2023, we have courses coming at you across the country, and we couldn't be more delighted for you to join us. Our next most recent course will be March 4th. So, coming up quickly in Wichita. And then in April, we have an opportunity in North Carolina, April 1st and 2nd at Nightdale. That is a fabulous place to have a course and some of the best food I've ever had. In that region. So join me if you want to come along and get some good eats as well as some extremity management knowledge bombs. And then we'll also be in Oregon City, April 1st and 2nd as well. Mark will be there. So that's a busy weekend for us. And then on through the spring, May, we have some courses and then throughout the summer. So please check us out on ptonice.com. But I'd love to get back to the topic at hand. So before I dive a little deeper into what the literature says about how we can help someone decide whether they do surgery, right, or they become a coper after ACL injury, I want to give a hat tip to the leaders in the space of ACL research and management, Lynn Snyder-Mackler and Dr. Michael Axe. And so Wendy Hurd, you'll also hear me say her name. She's also from UD. G. Kelly Fitzgerald out of University of Pittsburgh. And then May Arner Risberg from Department of Sports Med at Oslo, Norway. And I'm sorry, Norway friends, if I pronounced that improperly. But I want to say the names that you'll see most common of all the names I just listed are Dr. Lynn Snyder-Mackler and Dr. Michael Axe. And they are right from Newark, Delaware. So they're literally in my backyard. I could walk a mile and be right in their research lab, which is pretty cool. Delaware, the first state that everyone forgets about, is really the true leader in this space of all things research. So what I'll be chatting with you today is a compilation of research from 2000 to 2019 from these folks. I also want to give a special shout out to my friend and colleague, Dr. Angela Hutchinson-Smith, who is a researcher at UD and works with their ACL population Achilles tendinopathy, as she kind of sent me just like a research dump. And all my knowledge from today is really from her sharing that with me. So let's get some terminology first set. So copers are those who demonstrate dynamic stability after ACL rupture, and they are able to return to sport or their work, whatever their life demands are, without ACL reconstruction. That is a coper. A non-coper is someone that has persistent instability events that requires ACL reconstruction. So both of these folks have an ACL tear confirmed, but one is able to cope and live without surgery, and one is not. When we think of athlete human returning to high level of play or activity participation, I'll have to tell you, and we all have to be honest, that we all automatically assume that that person needs surgery, right? Because they are so highly active. And that's really has been supported in the literature. But I'll tell you, this isn't always the case. And the more and more we keep finding out about ACLs and even just ACL's ability to heal at the 2-year mark, there's more and more opportunity to come alongside of our patients and to not have to go on to have surgery. But who are these folks? What will they look like in examination that lets us know that they're more likely to be a coper, that they're more likely to be a successful rehab candidate? So, first things first is everyone that has been a part of research studies, coper versus non copers, the first criteria that they have to meet is there can't be concomitant ligamentous, articular damage, or meniscal damage associated. So, the reason I say that is we don't know a lot about these folks as copers, right? So, if you're seeing a patient that has like the triad, um, those humans aren't included in this. It doesn't mean they can't ever be a coper, but the criteria I'm going to share with you that you're looking at in the clinic does not include those folks that have other things going on in the knee after injury. So, what are the 4 criteria that we can know that someone's likely to be a coper and be successful? Well, first off, it's that there's no more than one incidence of the knee giving way since the original injury. Number 2, when they do the knee outcome survey, the ADL subscale specifically, they have to have greater than 80% function, right? So only 20% away from 100% function. When we look at the global rating of knee function, they have to have at least 60% or more. For those not familiar with the global rating of function scale, basically you're rating the knee level from 0 to 100, 0 representing complete loss of function since ACL injury, and then 100 representing full level of function prior to knee injury. And then they just self assess that. Lastly, the fourth criterion is getting greater than 80% on a timed hop index compared to that uninvolved limb. Those first 3 criteria are pretty straightforward, right? It's a subjective report of knee giving way and then subjective report via outcome measures. The fourth one I want to spend a little time with the timed hop test so we know how to execute this in the clinic. Before I tell you what those 4 tests are in our hop testing, I do want to say a disclaimer that hop testing cannot be done until there is no pain and minimal joint effusion. We want full knee and joint range of motion prior to testing. And they have to have the ability to hop on the involved leg, right? So that first day, we're not doing these tests, to be clear. And it's also important to note that some of the studies, when they do the hop testing examination, they do allow an anti-rotation brace to be worn. So just from putting our clinical hats on and safety, consider that might need to be on board or have in your clinic prior to testing. Just to give you kind of some buoys about would a human after ACL insult be ready to do this hop testing? Um, when we look at the bulk of the literature, it's about a median time of about 4 weeks, right, until range of motion's back, swelling's down, and that really it's a big span. So 1 week to 4 months, the median time was about 4 weeks. So some folks with maybe lesser degrees of ACL are ready to test a little bit sooner, while some others might be on that bigger end of 4 months. In general, there is suggestion that before you do hop testing, there should be some delay, right? So that people are and our patients are better able to meet this coping criteria, right? Imagine someone that just tore their ACL and you're like, okay, I want you to hop on one leg and hop as fast as you can, right? That would be quite dangerous. So we want to give them a little bit of time to be able to meet this criteria. So the hop test battery, what does it involve? Well, it's 4 tests. And you always do uninvolved leg first and then involved leg. They get a practice run, and then you do it 2 times, and then you take that average. The first one is just a single hop on one leg for distance. The second is a crossover hop where they will hop across a line, one-legged. The third is a triple hop for distance. So we're going 1, 2, 3. And then a timed hop of 6 meters. These are, again, you get 2 reps at these after a practice round, and then they're averaged. And we're looking for 80% as compared to the uninvolved limb. If you're looking for a visual or for these hop tests, look at University of Delaware ACL protocol. They are in there. It's a nice, easy way that gives clear instructions. And this really comes from 1991, Noyes et al. As research for the hop testing. But this is the same battery of tests that are used time and time again in our ACL literature. So if all of these criteria are present, so, right, that no instance of giving way, one or less, the KOS ADL score greater than 80%, that global rating of knee function greater than 60%, and then our hop battery being greater than 80% as compared to that uninvolved limb. This allows someone to be a candidate for being a coper, for conservative care. But I will tell you, this doesn't automatically mean they'll be successful. But what it means is that it's possible for them to cope without surgical intervention. So if we pair this criteria with care that involves intensive rehab, with progressive neuromuscular and strength training, our patients have the opportunity to do really well and cope with that torn ACL and go back to high level sport participation. We have one of our longest studies to illustrate this is a 10-year prospective study in 2008 out of the American Journal of Sports Medicine by Hurd et al., Dr. Michael Axe, and then Dr. Lynn Snyder-Mackler when they studied copers versus non-copers. It's one of our largest and longest studies in this space. For those that elected to do non-operative care that passed the 4 criteria that I listed earlier for you all, right? Again, no giving way, greater than 60% on global rating knee function, greater than 80% KOS, ADL scale, and then that time top index of greater than 80%. Out of the 146 potential copers in this big study, 88 chose to pursue conservative management. 63 of the 88% of the 88 folks, so 72% of the copers were successful in return to play without incidents of giving way. So that's a pretty high percentage, but appreciate it's not perfect, right? There's still almost 30% of folks, right, that did need to end up going on to get surgery. I'll let you I wanted you to know that it's important to note that return to sport criteria looks like this, that at least greater than 90% is scored on the hop test as compared to the uninvolved limb. The global rating of knee function and KOS ADLs need to be greater than 90. And I would argue 100%, right? We really want our folks to be confident in their knee, and there can be no instance of giving way. Failure of return to sport is an incidence of giving way, right? That resulted in pain and or swelling. So, what does that long term study tell us, right? If I had to give a big summary, even when folks pass the criteria, right, the 4 criteria, they may still opt for surgery. When they do fit the criteria, a majority percentage will successfully return to play, right? So, this conservative management, we have a big opportunity in this space. We need to know our screening if we're gonna be in the space, right? We have to know how to do and execute the hop test. It requires a stopwatch, a tape measure, and about an hour to do the questionnaires and the hop testing. So if you have that, you can do this for your patients. Appreciate that the initial screening needs to be delayed, right? Probably about 4 weeks before they do it so that they actually have the chance to meet the COPER criteria. And in addition, this screening doesn't guarantee that they will be a successful coper, right? Think about 70% as being about the percent that we see being successful when they fit the coper criteria. I'll tell you the most important indicators when we look at the literature as a whole in the ACL literature is that subjective report seems to matter most in combination with that hop test, right? The higher the score, the greater the 80%, the better they do. And if we wanna really have high standards, I'd say greater than 90%, right? We know how powerful, belief and expectation is. So if a patient has that and is very confident in their knee, they're gonna tend to do a lot better. I also want you to know, just to have some knowledge in your back pocket to end kind of the show, is that there is some evidence that about of 5 weeks of progressive exercise therapy or 5 weeks, 10 sessions of progressive neuromuscular and strength training after ACL rupture It allows potential copers to pass coper criteria, and when they follow folks that do this 5 week of progressive exercise therapy, they see that at the 2 years, when they follow them down the line, that folks that either chose to be copers or non-copers went after surgical intervention, when they did that 5 weeks firsthand, they did better at the 2 years, no matter if they chose surgery or not. So I think it's really important for us to also know there's a place for conservative management no matter what, to get that neuromuscular reeducation piece a little bit better, whether they choose to be a coper or not. So trying 5 weeks, I think, is something we should all kind of counsel our patients on after ACL rehab. Know that this is always an individualized and multifactorial decision that happens with you and orthopedic and the patient, but letting them know their options and that that 5 week bout before improves their potential to be a coper, right? Especially the person that doesn't really want the surgery or can't really afford it because it would take them away from their manual therapy job. And other cool things to consider that I kind of mentioned earlier, we have evidence just coming out in January 2023 that there's hope on the horizon for ACLs actually healing themselves at the 2 year, which is really cool. So time also may be an untapped resource in combination with rehabilitation. To be or not to be a coper is a very individualized decision, and you can help your patients by screening them well with the 4 tests, advocating 4 to 5 weeks of strength and neuromuscular rate training on the front end to help make that decision in a more educated way is the way. Thanks for your time this morning on this Clinical Tuesday to wrap on ACL care decision making. Cheers, everyone, and have a great Tuesday.